And it's time. It's 8:30. I want to welcome on our guest. He
Here we go.
does cover the Arizona Cardinals, staff writer for Fan Nation on Sports Illustrated. Mr. Kyler Burd. Reached out to him. He hit me back. He said, I'll join the show, which I do appreciate him. We do this every single week. We try to bring on whoever the Lions are facing, someone in that market that covers the team. Love to hear their perspective. So please welcome to the show, Kyler Burd. Kyler, how you doing, my man?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. And I do want to pick your brain, Kyler, because I know, at least from a different perspective, we spent a lot of time here talking about the Detroit Lions, who they're facing. We were talking earlier about the injury to your guy, and you can kind of break this down a little more for me, because it's been a conversation. He's leading the league in sacks, but people bring up typically, well, he's faced back-to-back tackles. It seems like he might face another backup this week, Kyler. Can you give some insight to the injury situation going on at that tackle position?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a massive point of concern right now. Kelvin Beachum is already the backup, and it seems that, Wednesday this week in practice kind of went down, maybe a knee thing. Nothing's been confirmed. Jonathan Ganon is pretty notoriously close to the vest as far as injury reports go. And so we don't really have much there. He said in his press conference today that he thinks Beachum will be okay. What that means for Sunday, I don't know. No one really does. But if that means we're going to a third string backup at right tackle, then I'm genuinely afraid of Aiden Hutchinson and what he could do, because losing Jonah Williams in the first quarter of that Bills game was already a pretty big blow to the Cardinals offensive line. But Kelvin Beachum played decently last week against the Rams, actually. But if we got to go to that third option, then we're looking at maybe Isaiah Adams, who's that third-round rookie that we took this year out of Illinois, who really is more of a guard, but he did play a little bit of tackle at Illinois. And then there are some practice squad guys that have been called up, which is not like a super great sign for the potential of Beachum playing. But there are some options there. Aiden Hutchinson might have a great game against the right side of the line this week.
Oh.
Man, I want to kind of just stay on the offense here, especially that's kind of been the Lions. Our offense has struggled a little bit, and the defense is starting to step up, and we're not really used to that. But now going this week, one thing the Lions defense has struggled with is mobile quarterbacks. And obviously Kyler Murray seems to be back after that injury, and he looks very, very good the first 2 weeks. What are your expectations, I guess, just with Kyler, and as well as the weapons around him with James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr.? What are you looking this week versus the Lions defense? What do the Lions have to do to even stop a guy like Kyler Murray and slow him down?
When Kyler Murray is on at his very best, we've kind of seen across the league, there's not that much you can do against him. I do think he was kind of held back schematically during the Cliff Kingsbury years, if we're being honest. Just a guy that has the level of football talent of Kyler Murray, not having had the career that many of us expected him to have. But here in his sixth year, he just seems so comfortable with the Ganon regime, and he seems comfortable with all the guys around him. And going into the season, as a Cardinals reporter and fan, we all expected the offense to be really good. They have the pieces around them. It seems like Kyler finally has legitimate wide receiver options. James Conner is continuing to do James Conner things. And then the offensive line going into the year, I think, was a little bit underrated. We've kind of had this lingering reputation in Arizona of a bad offensive line that kind of comes from those really, really rough 2018, 2019 years. But having Paris Johnson Jr. at left tackle, I think he's really flourishing there. It's the right side of the line that's just a little bit iffy, but you still have a right guard in Will Hernandez, who's very good. Really, arguably one of the best guards in the league right now. And at their best, I think the Cardinals offense is tough to beat for any defense, because I think what we saw in week one that we didn't really know that we were seeing was the Cardinals offense going up against what looks like a really good Bills team. And we all kind of expected the Bills defense to maybe take a step back this year just for missing so many people from their previous runs. But the Bills defense looks good. The Bills offense looks good. I think how we view week one now, as far as how the Cardinals offense operated that week, looks a lot better. I think it's a high-powered offense, but Detroit has a serious defense too. And I think kind of the key for a Detroit team looking to stop Kyler Murray would be to start with stopping James Conner. Because if you let James Conner go and then you let Kyler Murray be that secondary running option that keeps everyone on their toes as well, that is incredibly hard to beat when you've got a bruising back like James Conner doing his thing. So if you can get that pressure up on the front defensive line and in your front seven, I think that's going to go a long way. And I think you also just have to be super cautious, and you have to put a spy on Kyler Murray. You cannot play a game against the Cardinals without having someone looking after him, because he's one of the purest rushing threats at the quarterback position right now that kind of gets overlooked when you've got the Lamars in the world. But you definitely have to keep an eye on that, or he's going to put 60 or 70 yards on the ground against you.
Yeah, you ain't lying.
Now, Kyler, flipping over to the other side of the ball, defensively for the Cardinals, which matchups personnel-wise, from a Cardinals perspective, do you have the most confidence in? And then which matchup you're kind of like, I think Detroit's going to have their way there? Because I think on the front seven, there's definitely some matchup to exploit. But I think when you look at Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker, I think that's one of the best safety rooms in the NFL.
Yeah, the backside of the secondary is great. Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker, I think have proven themselves over the past couple of years to be, if not the best, one of the best safety duos in the league. But I do think there's going to be some serious matchup problems as far as playing man coverage, one-on-one Arizona cornerbacks against a lot of these Lions receivers. You just have fast, strong, good, tall guys at receiver that I think are pretty bad mismatches with a lot of what Arizona's running with on the outside. We just did not make a huge push in this offseason to get a huge name cornerback. And then we went with Darren Robinson in the late part of the first round instead of going with secondary there as well. So I think there are some weaknesses there. Sean Murphy-Bunting's kind of the standard CB1 that we've got. And if we're going to be playing any of that man coverage that Nick Rawlis likes, and you're putting Sean Murphy-Bunting against someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's a serious mismatch. So I do think he's going to get behind the defense a lot. I do think the Cardinals are going to have to rely on Budda and Jalen to sort of mop up a lot of those missed things. On the front, kind of in the front seven, I think Mack Wilson and Kaiser White have actually been a pretty underrated duo at inside linebacker. And they're going to have a tough go of it with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think that's going to be key to the defensive performance, is just not letting the Lions run. If you let Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery run on you and then make that game even harder by opening stuff up on the outside for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams and the others, and Sam Laporta in the middle too, I think you just have to control the run to have any chance at it, or things could get out of hand pretty fast with that Lions offense.
Last one for me, Kyler. At least a guy that me and Lukas have been high on, and everyone has been high on here, even before the combine. And in college football, you see Lukas. He has the Ohio State hoodie on. I mean, this guy, Marvin Harrison Jr., is a freak. And I have him on my fantasy team, so I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. I needed him to play well last week. He did. This week, him versus Carlton Davis. Can give me some insight to what he's meant to this offense. I know the first week he was wide open and Kyler had to address it and everything. But your confidence in his ability this week to continue and build on what he did last week.
I've got full confidence in MHJ. I really do. The overreaction after week one, it was just a thing. He's a rookie. Things like that happen. But week two, I kind of think just dispelled any doubts that anyone could have about the guy. He showed everything he possibly could have ever shown in college as an elite, like top tier receiver. And that game, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns in 1 quarter. That just kind of blows your mind. Now, it is concerning that he disappears for the rest of that game. That is a little bit concerning. But I think he's going to be the focus through which the entire Cardinals offense works through. Kyler Murray, his entire career has been hamstrung a little bit by not having that one specific target. He had like one season really with D-Hop at his prime, where both of them were healthy and they really had that connection going. And that was great. We saw an amazing season from that 1,400 something yard season from D-Hop that year. But that's really been it. And I think if we've seen in the past few years with Amon-Ra, with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, that wide receivers don't have that like 2 to 3 year period of where they got to break into the league anymore. They just come in and they're ready to go and they're professionals. And I think Marvin Harrison has the pedigree to do that. He's been around professional sports his entire life. He talks like a pro. His press conference after that game was mostly him just being mad that Kyler Murray's incompletions were to him. He wasn't really that concerned that he got 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was super mad that he dropped 2 potential touchdowns and that all of Kyler Murray's incompletions were sent his way, were his targets. So I think he has every element that he needs to be the number one guy. And he just opens up everything. The number one guy always does. And then you've got dangerous guys like Trey McBride too, that you really have to be careful of in the middle, because Trey McBride can be a game wrecker, and he definitely has that ability. But Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be the future. And if that's a long-term connection there, I think that's going to be a super successful one. But against Carlton Davis specifically, Carlton Davis, he's got the experience. But Marvin Harrison Jr., he's got that sneaky speed, and he's got a size that's kind of hard to beat, that torso that's so long, that 6'3" frame. I mean, we saw him leap 5 yards into the end zone just to get a score last week. He's capable of some incredible stuff. So I won't be that shocked if we do see some over-the-top things, just placing the ball where only he can get it, if Carlton Davis is going to be that guy who's following him predominantly through the game. But I think he's got some good matchups against the Lions secondary.
Yeah, and Kyler, other side of the ball here, because one thing I think it's been pretty obvious, and I think the whole nation knows it, is like the Lions offense has struggled through 2 weeks now, and that was complete opposite of what everyone thought. And like going up against a defensive mind like Todd Bowles last week, you kind of saw him take advantage of some things. Do you think, like with Jonathan Gannon, obviously a really good defensive-minded head coach, what are your thoughts on like not knowing, especially with this Lions offense, where it's like any week he could finally start clicking and things could come together? Do you think that it's going to be a tougher matchup for him just because, like with the defense that you guys have there, like not knowing what the Lions offense is going to do this week? Or is it, hey, let's just do what Todd Bowles did last week and let the Lions adjust? What do you think is going to happen there with that matchup?
I think from what I've seen of Ganon, he's not so cocky that he won't take what works from other coaches and make it work for him. Yep. He's a student of the game. And I do think in a lot of ways, Jonathan Gannon and Dan Campbell are similar coaches to me, just kind of in the way they approach the game and the way they approach their players. Because the players play hard for Jonathan Gannon. I think if you look at the paper specifically, there's huge mismatches with Lions and the Cardinals defensive players. That's, if you looked only at the names on the roster, there's not a ton of talent on that side of the ball for Arizona. But they, last year specifically, even though it was a 4-13 year, they played way harder than the talent that you see listed on the roster. I think Gannon's going to look at what Todd Bowles did. But what I will say that I'm worried about for the Cardinals is I think we're meeting the Lions at a very bad time. Because I do think because of who Dan Campbell is as a person and a coach, and how much blame he seemed to place on himself for that loss last week, that's going to be a super motivated Detroit team, super motivated. And those players are going to play for their coach. And I think Dan Campbell's going to be super ready. I think I also saw this morning that in the last couple seasons, the Lions are 8-0 after a loss. They've lost many back games.
Why? Yeah.
And that's concerning. I think Dan Campbell, he takes the hints when he makes mistakes, but Jonathan Gannon is a very similar coach too. So he's going to see what worked against the Rams, who are not a team to sneeze at, even if they are a little bit undermanned right now. He's going to see what worked there. He's going to see what Todd Bowles did against your offense. But I do think that third game of the season is where we start to sort of see what teams are actually made of. And I don't think the Lions are made of what they showed last week. I don't. They're a good team who went far last year, and I think are going to go far this year too. They're kind of my NFC favorites preseason, and I'm going to stick by that. I think they're a very good team. They're coached really well, and that offense underperformed. I mean, there's no way around that. They just did, and I don't think they're going to do that 2 weeks in a row. So I do think that they are going to put up points against an Arizona defense. But on the other hand, I think the Cardinals are going to keep the offensive thing rolling, and it's going to be a shootout. It would be my prediction there.
Kyler, I like you. I like you. I think you're staying unbiased. You're just telling it how it is. I respect it. But a guy that you brought up previously when talking about Marvin Harrison is Trey McBride. And he's somebody that, as Detroit Lions fan, we love Sam Laporta. I could imagine as Arizona Cardinals supporters, you love Trey McBride because he had a hell of a season last year. And I think he's definitely been off to a better start than Laporta, but I don't think he's off to the start that some Cardinals fans expected. Do you think he gets it going this week against the Lions? Because that defense is impressive, but so is Trey McBride as a player. He's just extremely talented.
Trey McBride, man, he's something that Cardinals have not seen in such a long time. We're just not a franchise that's been known to have solid tight ends like that. So he's such a new shiny toy for Cardinals fans, and he's definitely a fan favorite. I think this is kind of a tougher matchup for him than you would think on paper. But I do think that Kyler Murray is going to make kind of a concerted effort to go there in the middle of the field. To Trey McBride, he had some very impressive catches last week against the Rams too. So he's getting going. But I think we all kind of knew that with Marvin Harrison Jr. coming into the building, Trey McBride probably isn't going to be your leading receiver like he was last year. But he is going to be that blanket for Kyler Murray at all times. And the connection that they have, McBride's the tallest guy on the team. He's the guy who can get those high point balls. And I think Murray knows that. So I'd always be looking for him in the red zone. He's a super red zone threat. I do find it interesting that his only touchdown this year has been on a fumble recovery. That was a fun way for him to get his first touchdown.
That's great.
But he'll get going too. I think he is kind of Kyler's second option. Michael Wilson is a solid number 2, but the drop-off between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride to the rest of the weapons there is a little bit of one. You got to admit that. But he is a solid player, and I think he'll have a good game.
Well, Kyler, before we get you out of here, appreciate you for joining. I got to get your score prediction.
Of course.
Give me a score prediction, Kyler. What do you think?
You know, I do feel like I have to be a homer on this, but also just being realistic.
That's fair.
Being realistic, I do think this is a game that's going to teach both teams a lot about who they actually are this season. And Kyler Murray has not beat the Lions yet. He is I think he's lost twice and he's tied once. His very first game as a rookie, he tied the Lions 27-27. But I think this is going to be pretty high scoring, but I'm going to go something like 34 Lions, 31 Arizona on a field goal in the fourth. I think it's just going to come down to whoever has the ball last, honestly.
Yeah.
I will say this, Kyler. Last week, our Bucs guy, Stephen Shea, picked the Lions to win, and then the Lions lost. So it was like a good way to be wrong. So you could be going back-to-back weeks here. Hopefully not, but
yeah, hey, that's fair.
Maybe it works out for us. Yeah.
Well, Kyler, appreciate you so much. And I know we went a little over time, but again, easily the best guest we've had yet, at least from other teams. So keep up the great work. Give Kyler a follow. Link will be in the description. Kyler, good luck this weekend, my friend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good luck, everybody.
Appreciate it,
Kyler Burd. Check his stuff out. Again, covers the Arizona Cardinals for Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. Fan Nation on Sports Illustrated. But guys, you heard it from him. A lot. I like the perspective there because, again, the stuff that we talk about from our perspective, Kyler was chiming in on some stuff that we didn't know.